Awesome. Okay, Adriana, I know you emailed me, but why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Tell me where you're at, what you're doing, and what you would like to be doing when you graduate.
Okay. So I'm a senior. I'm double major in graphic design and advertising. After graduation, probably gonna take a year because it's been tough. But I want to go maybe get my master's in like universal design. That's basically like my passion. So making designs that are like accessible for everyone. Um, and if it's not like universal design, I might even go like try out industrial design. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with what universal design is at all? Or
So I haven't heard of universal design quite yet. But
yeah,
if you're talking about like accessibility and just being conscious of,
pretty much that's it.
every, so I
Hmm.
mean, that would be great. You should consider, if you are looking to take a year,
Hmm.
consider also potentially taking that master's somewhere outside of the States.
Oh, for sure. I'm not staying here any more than I should be. After graduation, I'm getting the fuck out because for anything that's accessibility related, the US isn't really pushing the like anything. And I
I
really
actually had a
am
friend, I had a
tired of
friend who
hearing.
went to study in Amsterdam
Yeah.
for, I think, somewhat of the same program or somewhat of the same idea. He focused on accessibility. He focused on designing for all types of people. And he really enjoyed it. I will definitely include him as a reference in the document and the notes. So, um, you said you're in your third year?
I'm a senior, so this is
You're a
my,
senior.
God willing, last year and semester here. So
Okay, cool. So you're getting ready. And then basically you want to take a year off and you want to potentially go for your master's.
mm,
So would you just like to kind of talk about like how we can kind of work towards that of like applying for a master's and making sure like we really show all the stuff that you learned about in
okay.
school?
So here's the thing. I'm not really looking into applying for my master's just right now at this moment. My focus right now would be applying for internships because I need
Awesome.
two
That's
in
great.
order to graduate. Because the whole double major thing, they want me to do two internships. It's just kind of insane. Um, and I did kind of push it towards the last minute, basically because of COVID and just internships were hard to find for the longest time. Um, and I didn't study abroad because it's too expensive. So there's that. Yeah, basically, I would want to get an internship with anything that's like branding related. I wouldn't like push away anything that had to do with like content creation, even though that's not necessarily my passion. But again, just for like the sake of experience and like getting that work experience, I'm like totally okay with whatever. Um, and then anything that has to do with like diversity, inclusion, and things like that, like I'd really love to get into. Not necessarily HR, but that type of thing, if that makes sense.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead and pull up your portfolio.
Mhm.
So let's think about like, okay, how do we nail an internship? How do we, make sure that we're sending everything, correctly. We have the right projects in there. We have everything organized in a way that makes it really clear.
Yeah.
So I looked at this a little bit before. I think you're using Wix, correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Did you have any other ideas of what you wanted to maybe use other than Wix or by chance or not? Or was just
Um,
Wix like the easiest thing?
Wix at the time at the moment that I'm in,
Gotcha. Okay.
it's the cheapest option because Adobe
Totally.
Portfolio after graduation is just gonna be too expensive to like keep up. And then Squarespace was like a couple bucks more expensive. And then I didn't do Webflow because the first time that I used it, I just didn't like it. So there's that.
Sure. Yeah. It could definitely be a little overwhelming. Okay. So immediately when I looked at your website, on your homepage here, I have, after doing a bunch of these reviews, I've seen this sort of layout a few times. So I
Mhm.
kind of knew it was Wix immediately, which is fine. I get it. What I think I'm missing here, right? Because this kind of reminds me of like kind of like the link in bio setup where you have like these blocks here and you can
Yeah.
click into them, like if I were to look on this on my phone potentially, which is fine. What I think would be really useful for you, especially with this idea of like you want to be applying to internships and working towards that and getting some experience. One, I
Mhm.
think you should use, I think if you haven't already used it, you should use something like Figma,
Yeah.
and you should put together sort of a presentation like you would a PowerPoint or a keynote or something like that. So you're just like going to be designing like 1920 by 1080 slides that will introduce like who you are. Your first two slides will be something like, hey, I'm Adriana. This is my experience. This is like all the things that I've been doing in school. This is what I'm like looking to do in my next opportunity or my next internship, blah, 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 blah. That'll be like your first two slides. And then your first slide will be like your first project or anything like that. So it could be any of these, whatever you think is like really awesome.
Mhm.
Out of all these, which one should I pick first? What should we walk through first?
Um, okay, the one that I think aligns most with what I would like to be doing would be Aldea, the branding plus universal design one, which
Cool.
I think now that I say that should probably be at the top.
Okay, so then if that's the case, then as we're talking about this idea of like putting together a presentation and leading with that, this would be your first slide, right? So you'll
Yeah.
introduce it as, Aldea, and you'll probably include this, right? An inclusive skincare brand developed with the thought that every product has been made for the universe with ethnic, physical, and so inclusive. Okay. Made for the universe with ethnic, physical, and cognitive differences. It is an inclusive skincare brand developed with the thought. So I would think about potentially rephrasing this, and I think you could probably simplify it. Like
Okay.
Aldea is an inclusive and thoughtful, or inclusive and some inclusive and blank skincare brand
Okay.
developed to serve all ethnic, physical, and cognitive differences, something along those lines, right?
Mm,
Like that's really
I
simple.
like that. Yeah.
The project utilizes the combination of colors, text sizes, text and text sizes, tactile, braille, aromas, and other sensorial differentiators so that people with a wide variety. So then again, you can kind of simplify this, right? Like you have,
Mhm.
this is where your starting point is now, right? Now, how do we
Yeah.
simplify this to be super clear and really easy? So one, maybe like, yes, this is a project that you did, that's fine. But again, you kind of want to like present it bigger than it might actually be, right? So even though it's a project, you could say something like Aldea is a brand that combines, or Aldea's products are created to appeal to all senses, allowing it to speak to many different people with many different disabilities or whatever it may be. Again,
Okay.
you want to like try and simplify it a bit. When you
Okay.
start to act, when you get into this, the part that you actually start talking about, like, because this sentence, this kind of piece here starts to talk about a little bit about the design, right? Like we're
Yeah.
using a color combination that is, I'm just gonna, for lack of a better words, is accessible,
Yes.
is is legible to people with eyesight disabilities.
Mhm.
The copy and text sizes throughout the labels are made at a size, again, to allow people with eyesight disabilities to more easily read it. In addition, we are adding a braille tactile feel so that, same thing, like that's when you start talking about design, and you want to do that
Yeah.
after you introduce the brand or the project.
Okay. So I put that like way later, like combined with the text, with the images, maybe.
You could do it a number of different ways. And again, like we're looking at your website, but I want you to keep thinking about it as like, okay, if I put together slides as a presentation, how would I incorporate that, right? So like, if this is a 1920 by 1080 slide, maybe the left side has text and you're explaining, each piece, and the right side has an image of the label or the close-up or something.
Okay.
Aldea. Okay, cool. So like this is like the introduction of where the name came from, right? So like
Yeah.
that might be your first piece before you get into like real nitty-gritty design, right? Aldea is derived from the Latin word or whatever it is. I hate that I can't pause these things. And a
Yeah,
village
I'll change
depends on
it.
the greater majority to administratively take care of it. Aldea. So it translates to village.
Mhm.
A village depends on the greater majority. This is on. Is this a true definition, or is this like
Mm.
the?
That is the okay, kind of the Spanish definition for it.
Mhm.
I think it might be the true definition in English. I'm not entirely sure, but basically, like the whole concept was like getting people to be able to like work independently, or like people that are able-bodied, like trying to like actually be able to like help out these individuals, if that makes sense. Or
Sure. Yeah.
have the smaller villagers be able to just take their own power back and be able to like take care of themselves.
Well, this statement kind of like speaks to the idea that we're being
Let me
considerate
see.
of others, and like we're
Mm-hmm.
also thinking about other people. We're not just thinking about ourselves, which I also kind of think is like a moment that might actually be better at like sort of the top or the beginning of this presentation for Aldea, where it's like, Aldea, a village depends on the great majority to take. Like I would think about to administratively kind of doesn't fit with this
Yeah,
vibe.
that's literally okay. So that definition is the Spanish version of it.
Mhm. And that's fine. I don't think you need to stay true to that
Mm-hmm.
exactly, because it almost
Okay.
feels more like a brand statement
Yeah.
than like a dictionary definition. So I think
Okay.
about that. Concept has been developed in the micro to satisfy the wants and needs of the macro universe, with thought that every product has been made for the universe with ethnic, physical, and cognitive. So this is sort of repeating what you had
Yeah.
at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. Again, like we're thinking about this in a presentation format. So like this would be sort of in the beginning anyway, but you don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll notice you won't need to repeat that.
Yeah.
Okay, some mock-ups. Products usually, okay, again, so like you created these slides almost like presentation, right? So like all this stuff up
Yeah.
here is in some of these. Okay, so you kind of get the idea that I'm trying to get to you. Like
Mm-hmm.
our products utilize a combination of colors, text hierarchy, tactile. The thing with the statement is it's
I
very
think it's
general.
definitely long.
It's
Too.
a little too general, right? Like of course you use color, of course you use text hierarchy, of course you use, those things. That's design, right?
Yeah.
I would get actually a little bit more specific, as like the type size that we chose was important because people with this specific disability could, this is like the minimum size that they can read. People who are blind don't know normally how to, like I would even bring in a stat like 90% of the beauty market is not made for people that cannot see with eyesight,
Yeah.
and then that's like
Yeah.
where this whole product starts to make more sense.
Oh yes. Oh my God. Yes. I should probably then.
um
It's not more or less like research that I should put in, but like I guess more of the research that went into like the development of the project.
Absolutely. That should absolutely be in here. If like
Okay.
you're, again, this statement is very general,
Yeah.
but if it's a product that was developed for people with disabilities, then I want to know like what was the thought behind it, or like what is the market that actually can be served for a product like this.
Yeah. Okay.
Aldea.
And those are just the mailer boxes.
Mhm. So it looks like this packaging differs a lot from the label. Can you talk me through that?
Yeah. So since the whole kind of brand talks about like, I think at least in my opinion, it kind of is about like visibility. I wanted to like illustrate windows. So that's a window,
Mhm.
and that's just a staircase. Um, in my mind, it kind of tied everything together. Now that you mention it, definitely does look different from the label. I did want it to be a little bit more different. Um, and when I originally designed this project, I had different product boxes for each different product boxes for each product basically. But I
So I would,
scrapped them for the sake of my portfolio because those designs were not it, and I haven't had time to revise them. And one of the reasons why I didn't put the windows into the design is because the braille is to braille has to be a certain size and a certain format. So if I were to like complicate it even more, and since with like legibility is a big part of the project, I wasn't like I couldn't find a specific way that I could incorporate that element without compromising some of the things that I was already going for. So
mhm. I
I just
would,
opted to make the label simpler.
I would consider potentially revisiting this packaging to maybe better align with some of the label work, but
Okay.
I see what you were trying to get at with this idea of a window and a staircase, right?
Mm,
But it's so vastly different from the product
yeah.
that we were just kind of looking at for the most part, right?
Mm,
So just some ideas. Like one, I would look to simplify that idea of a window and a staircase, simplify it down to its most basic idea or basic shapes and form.
yeah.
I would also consider really focusing like on that piece that you just mentioned about the braille where it has to be a certain size. You know,
Mm,
if it seems like this product, you're able to talk more about it from the eyesight sort of disability, and there's not a
yeah.
lot of discussion or there's not a lot of points on everything else that you've mentioned, right? So like ethnic, cognitive, there's not too much of that that I've seen from
Mm,
the stuff that you put together. So I think it's something to think about. Either is this a product that is more focused towards individuals with eyesight disabilities? If so, that's fine. Can we
mm,
then like work on some of these packages or this packaging to really focus on that? Or if it's not, and you want it to be a product that serves multiple disabilities, again, I think then you need to ask yourself, okay, like is everything on these labels, is everything that I've designed serving those other
disability.
demographics?
Yeah.
And again, it's like whatever route you want to take is fine. I'm not saying there's right or wrong, but I think you need to ask yourself, okay, if I do take this route, is the design currently doing that? Or if I take this route, is design currently doing that? And then I would
Yeah.
explore more, I would start to do a couple more exercises of, okay, if I'd explore this more focus on eyesight disability, well, are people with this disability going to be able to really notice that this is a staircase and a window, and how do I like make
Yes.
that design
Mm,
work for that, or vice versa. um the other thing I would think about, right? So as you're putting this in a presentation, I think you're going to be kind of slim on content. So what I would consider doing is
oh,
thinking
I've
about
got
how you can
more.
if you can, okay, great. I would get that in there, and I would think about expanding some of these applications, right? So again, like if this is a product serving a demographic that has more of an eyesight disability, social media doesn't quite make sense, at least in my head, like right now. Again, like I don't know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
this project. You definitely probably know more.
Mm-hmm.
What makes sense for that demographic? How does the brand then express itself to those people, right? Is it audio? Is it this? Is it that? Like, how can you then kind of get some of these elements into those other applications
Mm, okay.
and have fun with it? Like I think this is a
Yeah.
really cool project. I think this is awesome. I think it just needs to be pushed a little bit further and then organized to really let all that research and process that you went through to build it come out. Okay.
Mm,
Let's go back to portfolio. Does that make sense?
yeah, it does. It definitely does.
Okay. Which one should I click on next?
Um, I don't know. I feel
Morpho or Mio?
Morpho's pretty good. I think so. And Neo is too.
Yeah, Morpho is a premium sports brand focused on self-improvement, wellness, and inclusivity. Aims to represent people of all shapes, backgrounds, and abilities while prompting self-love and sustainability. Okay, lovely. This is good. Inspired by butterflies, more metamorphosis. Butterflies Metamorphosis, the brand evokes positive attributes to aid people through their transformation. Emphasizing the message of change. Great. This is very well written. Makes a lot of sense. It's very clear. This is lovely. This is a lovely layout that you've put together already. This is looking really good. And usually, like, you know, with a lot of these portfolios, there's always like a negative space issue, like between images or between sections, but the way you have the space between each image just works out really nicely. So good job on that. Consumer journey. Okay, this is where things start to get a little like super, like there's so much text here, right? And immediately you're kind of like, okay, I don't want to look at this. So I would think about trying to break these up into pieces, right? And you can probably make like 3, 4, maybe 5 slides out of this one thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, who is our demographic? Meet Anna. Anna is a blank, 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 blah, 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 you know? What does she want? What's her behavior? Blah, 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 blah. You know, like try to break this up. I know you probably put this together, probably for a project, probably for an assignment, whatever, and it had to be organized in this way. But now that's over, you can then change it up and make it do whatever you want. Again, the other thing is, so like wanting to get into brand, I think this is a really nice project. I think this is great. I would also like to see you take a couple more hits at what this looks like applied to the clothing or a tag or social media, whatever it may be. You know, let's push this design a little bit further and get those applications into this as well. And again, with this idea of like putting this all in a nice presentation so that you can then send that to people as you apply to internships. Let's go to Mio really quickly. Okay, so immediately
my issue with this one is the layout, because it's just
immediately we've already diverged from the other two projects, which I don't like. You know, you've already set an expectation for me, and I'm expecting to look at the same thing, you know, the same way I want to be guided through. I would work on your typography here, your hierarchy. Again, like everything's starting to just look like a big wall of text. So how can we break this up and really walk people through it? This too, you know, break out. We don't need to be trying to fight the website to like hold on to these things. Like break this out and let's look at it side by side. I don't get what this is. I know what you're trying to do, but again, if I don't know you and I don't speak with you, is it worth it? And these are okay, right? Like these are totally fine, but the way you have them in this carousel, I think takes away from it. So what I would do is I like these two. I get, you know, these are totally fine as like, yeah, these are die line, you know, mocks for production and what the store, the outside of the store would look like. If you could find a mock-up like that, great, right? Because then when you do slides like this, like there's not that much detail in these, enough for me to be like, yeah, you should have a slide on them on their own. They're better in the situation like this where you can see everything all at once. And I'm not really sure about the night and the day, you know. I think people won't click for people immediately. And then I would also consider finding a better mock-up for store signage. This is cool. Building brand awareness, great. But again, you know, like this mock kind of works, I guess, but like I'd almost rather see a big grid, 3x3 grid of all of this, right? Because this is like getting into like art direction and like how do we like what imagery do we curate on social media. And so like, that's like, it's not so much like, yeah, of course, if you put something in the phone and put a hand mock to it, like
Yeah.
people are like, oh, that looks good. And just together, I'm not a huge fan. Like maybe present one, then all the other, pieces that
Yeah.
you put together, just not together like this.
Okay.
Let's click on your about page really quickly. Yeah, going out. Fast. So I really like this. Design isn't about making something that looks good. It's about creating solutions that works for everyone. And I think since you want to focus on universal design, on accessibility, I think you should figure out how to say this in your own, like a little bit more in your own voice, like a little bit simpler, and just kind of like immediately hits on like, this is what I'm about. This is what I do.
Okay.
Like design isn't just about making things look good. It's about creating solutions that work for everyone, and just like
Mhm.
tweaking it a little
Yeah,
bit,
tweaking
and
it.
I
Mhm.
almost, and I think like graphic designer, graphic designer with a passion for universal design, helping brands create inclusive directions. Okay. I don't want to get too like, at the end of the day, you're a student, you want to apply to internships to get that experience.
Mhm.
I don't want to go too hard into like, you need to have this as your statement on your homepage. You need to do this, you need to do that.
Yeah.
Again, at the end of the day, I think what's really going to be helpful is like putting together a solid presentation that like really explains all the thought and research that goes into your projects. And that's going to get you a lot further than, having a super snazzy, super shiny website right now. Like your
Yeah.
website works, you can tweak a couple of slides, everything that we just talked about. But I think that presentation, especially if you're going for internships, is going to be the thing that gets you, kind of the opportunities. Is there anything else you want to go over in terms of website or projects or
Um,
anything like that
I don't
before
know.
we like
Like,
maybe jump
okay,
into some questions?
in terms of the website, I think you talk about layout, specifically for Mio, because that one was like one that I was struggling for a lot because I didn't know what to include and what not to. Um, and then Morpho, thank God that one's okay because that one's one of the ones that I actually like the most. And then
Mhm.
Aldea, it's just like adding a social media aspect and like more mockups, which is I agree with, and like narrowing down on demographic, which I had done, but then like even my professor was like, no, don't narrow yourself too much. If you want to like make universal design, like open it up. But I was like, the was definitely designed for people with like visual disabilities. Like I can't just say that it applies to everyone. So like there
Aldea,
was
the
that.
idea of Aldea can be a brand that has multiple products, but I
Hmm.
think that project and that product is, you're speaking very specifically about one, demographic you're kind of getting at.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
So
like
I
the
don't fucking
projects,
know what the word
that
on.
assignment's over, and you have now the ability to go back and revisit it. And
Yeah.
I would consider doing that. Is there any sort of like, any questions that you want to like, talk about or ask or anything like that?
Um, this is just a me thing. That it is okay. I go by Air 2 on the website or whatever. So I don't know if that's a like if that gets across, because that's my biggest concern right now, that it doesn't make any sense. But like my name is just too long. That was the base that was literally the only thing about it. Too long.
Listen, you're in school, you're young, you're gonna go through like a million different names,
Right? That's what I
over the
like
next
telling
couple of
myself.
years. So just do whatever is gonna make it easier on your mind to
Yeah.
not have to think about it all the time. If it's Air 2 designs right now, sure. In 3 years, 2 years, it might change.
It might
You
change.
might like actually find something and learn more about something that like makes sense for you or whatever.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about this idea of like a personal brand and I need to nail the name. I'm telling you, I've gone through a million different projects, a million different names. I've bought a million different domains. And recently, actually just like last month, I like decided that I wasn't going to renew a bunch of them because they weren't going to go anywhere. And I came up with a bunch of new ones. You know, it's just it's a constant thing. So do yourself a
Yeah,
favor, figure
like it's
out
an
like,
evolution thing.
just keep it simple for now. If
Mhm.
you wanna buy in, if you have a name, write it down, think about it. Don't stress about like needing to nail down this idea of like a brand name.
Okay. There was that. And then, oh, I've got my resume on my portfolio website. I wasn't sure how to like, I literally just like put a PDF on it, the picture, or a PNG. I don't even know what I did. But like, should I, instead of having it in that layout, lay it actually out on the website?
Yeah, I mean, sure, this works.
Okay.
I I understand why some people say like if you want to have your resume on your website, sure, but like I always sent my resume as a separate document and I never had it on my website.
Um,
So I don't
yeah.
think it's a huge deal. Again, like you are going to be, what I would recommend is that
Mhm.
you put a presentation together and you send that as your application, right? You can, and if they ask for your website, you can, obviously include that as well. But like, I think you lead with the presentation and, a resume is a resume. I think people get the point. A lot of people tend to like make a big deal. It's like, oh, this doesn't open into a new link or it's this or it's that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't find the need to include yeah, if you once you start getting experience as, a designer, as a creative, you can start listing those on your website because that will help. But like things like skills, education, awards, I mean awards at some point, but like some of the stuff just doesn't really need to be on here. So as long as you have this
Yeah.
organized, that's fine. You have it available, that's great. I wouldn't
Okay.
stress too much.
Perfect.
What I would do though is I would shift this creative experience. I'd make that on top. I would do I would just flip this creative experience
Okay.
first, leadership experience second, and then all this extra stuff at the bottom.
That actually makes even more sense than how I figured it out. You're right. Yeah. Other questions that I might have. I can't think of any. That kind of sucks. If anything, okay. You mentioned the presentation thing. It's on Figma, right? I've never used Figma, but I definitely can try. Um,
Have you ever made a PowerPoint?
yeah, I've made PowerPoints.
Okay,
And I've seen
so
TikToks on PowerPoints and how apparently they've gotten so good. So
have you used Adobe Illustrator?
yeah,
Okay, so
of
it's just like
course.
it's like Keynote and Illustrator put together. It's really simple. You don't have
Mhm.
to learn everything about it. Just learn how to make an artboard, add text, and add images. That's all you have to do. And the
Okay.
reason why I suggest it is because when you're done,
Mhm.
you can send it off as a link so that people can just click on it and click through. And it makes it really easy. It's simple. And when people realize that it's in Figma, like because it's a very popular app to use right now, people are like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm glad she made this in Figma.
Okay. Okay. I feel like okay, you're right. Because I have heard of Figma, but they haven't taught it to us here. So I just haven't had the time to like use it.
It'll take a
Um,
weekend. It'll take a weekend to learn it. It's really simple. And
then
of
I'll do
course,
that.
like it'll help you as you go on from school and as you start looking, chances are the places that you want to intern at or that you will intern at will use it at some point as well.
Okay, perfect. And then would it be fine to like once I have that done and make the next updates to schedule another appointment with you and like talk about it again?
Sure.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I've updated my availability. So it should be
Mhm,
more like around 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock. So
mhm.
at night and not like 3 a.m. I think you just happen to schedule a time like right before I updated it. So I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that, but
No,
you
you're
have my
totally fine.
email. You can send me a note and we can
Mhm.
sit down again. That's not a problem. What I
Okay.
will say is um after you get some sleep, don't stay up. You'll have an email from me.
Yeah.
It'll have it'll have like 2 questions basically, and then the faster
Mhm.
you can fill those out and send it back to me, that basically tells me where I should send the recording link and also the document with all the notes from our chat.
Okay, perfect. I'll do
Alrighty.
that. Yeah.
It was lovely to chat with you, Adriana. I'm so sorry that it's at 3:15 in the morning for you, but
Totally fine.
bear with me as I move time zones. Um, get some sleep, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Have a good one. Bye bye.
Bye bye.